Okay, you're about to see the Bethel Park Veterans Memorial Ceremony from 2016. Our guest speaker that year was Pete Edwards Jr. He actually is a 1938 graduate of Bethel Park High School. Pete Edwards talks a little bit about how he got involved in the military and what really drove him to enlist in the Army. Pete talks a little bit about how the country united behind the war effort and how everybody got involved. And how he also talks about flying the 48 missions in his P-51 Mustang. And he truly is a great representative of the greatest generation. So I hope you enjoy this presentation.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming to our Memorial Day ceremony at the Veterans Memorial. This is our 16th anniversary of the memorial. We'll be adding 5 new names today plus 1 paver. I want to thank Dave Cable and BPTV for recording this program. For everyone that could not make it here today, they'll be able to watch it on our local cable station this afternoon. But most of all, I want to thank all the veterans for the service that they gave our country. When our country needed you, you stood up and answered a call to defend our great nation. Today, people throughout the country will gather to remember, to honor, and to pay tribute to those who have served our country. Your presence here today is a tribute to those lost troops and their families. It's a way to remember. No matter when and where they served, we'll remember to honor them all. Thank you for attending today. God bless you and your families. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Bethel Park High School Top 21 Chorus for the National Anthem.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. On the ramparts we watch, where so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night as our flag was still there. Oh, sing does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the brave and the home of the brave.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Cliff Morton for the prayer.
Thank you, Jack. Morning, everyone. I guess you know that the Lord has blessed us today with this beautiful weather, and I'm sure we will enjoy it. To those veterans who are sitting back there or standing back there with your hats on at this time, we're going to have a prayer, so we ask you to uncover, and we'll do this. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful Memorial Day and all the many blessings you have bestowed upon us. Today we gather to remember the many sacrifices our servicemen and women have made throughout the years that we may enjoy our freedom. As we honor our veterans on this day, we pray that all will be blessed and each heart will be touched and know God's presence. In the name of Jesus, we ask this. Amen. Cover. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, everybody. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming today. And I think the Veterans Plaza has really developed into something not only we come to on Memorial Day, but really all year round. When you drive by here, you see other people coming to remember their family and their friends whose names are on the wall. But it truly is a beautiful place, and we thank everybody for coming today. We have a few people who would like to say a few words. We'll start with our state representative, John Marr.
Good morning, Bethel Park, and thank you for being here this morning. What a great turnout, and it is so appropriate that this community has dedicated itself to remembering those who have served our nation. These memorials, the work that's gone in, not just to create this plaza, but to track down and do the very best to locate and identify all those who've served and those who've made the ultimate sacrifice. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for remembering. And when we see our veteran friends today, let's thank them for what they've done. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce our District Justice, Ron Arnone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Boy, as Representative Marr stated, what a wonderful turnout, what a beautiful day, and what a great job that the Veterans Memorial Committee did with the plaza and the beautiful shrubbery, and everything looks so nice. It's so nice because Bethel Park remembers our fallen. We join together, generation after generation, to remember those that we lost in wars and battles throughout our countryside and beyond. I ask that today that you continue to, generation after generation, teach your children, that they can teach their children, that we have to remember and never forget the sacrifice that so many made, hundreds of thousands, that we might today be here in freedom and liberty as patriots, to remember those that gave all. So God bless you all. God bless Bethel Park. And thank you very much. Enjoy the day.
And from Congressman Murphy's office, John Stinner.
Good morning. Today we commemorate those who have served and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our great nation. On behalf of Congressman Murphy, the United States Congress, and a grateful nation, we thank each and every one of you and those who have served and died for our country all the best. And we thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Sophia Riley Gossa and Mark Joseph O'Brien in singing of God Bless America.
God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
And now I'd like to call up our County Councilwoman, Sue Means.
Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here today. And I just want to thank the Bethel Park Veterans Memorial Committee and the Bethel Park American Legion for bestowing a great honor on my father and our family today. For 90 years, my family has lived in Bethel Park. 5 generations have lived here. And we are very passionate about defending our freedoms, our town, our state, and our country. But before I begin on my speech, I want to cite the members of my family that are here today. Support to my father and honor to my father, and thank the citizens of Bethel Park for also honoring my father, Peter Edwards, for his service. Here today is my brother, Peter, and his wife, Jeannie Edwards, his sons, Clayton and Hayden Edwards, my husband, Jim, his wife, Adeline Edwards. Sorry, she should have been first. You can tell I'm a little nervous. And my daughter, Amy Blosel, my granddaughter, Haley Means, and my grandson, Jacob Blosel. They're all here, and Linda Murphy and Michael Murphy as well. The founding fathers of our country were inspired by the words of Edmund Burke. He was an Irish statesman. He said, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." We look upon the thousands of names on these granite stones, and we remember the men and women who volunteered to fight evil, and the thousands and thousands of parents and loved ones that kissed them goodbye, never knowing if they would ever see them again. And 41 of our members of our community paid the ultimate sacrifice. They shed their blood so we can be free. And how do we best honor their sacrifice? We also remember the words of Edmund Burke when he said, "Those who don't know history are destined to repeat it." History facts. The Pilgrims came to America for religious freedom. The Pilgrims declared a day of thanksgiving to the God who looked over them and protected them. In the middle of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln had the words, "In God we trust," put upon our coins. After World War II, the greatest generation made the official motto of the United States, "In God we trust." And this year marks the 60th anniversary of "In God we trust." So how do we honor the sacrifice that those who volunteered to serve? They volunteered to serve to protect our way of life. So the principles that we believe in, our Constitution and our freedoms. So the best way to honor them is to stand beside them and defend our freedoms and liberty and our way of life. Thank you.
Now it's time for our introduction of the guest of honor, Peter S. Edwards, Jr. Good morning. It's my honor to introduce this morning on Memorial Day our guest speaker, Peter S. Edwards, Jr., better known to many of us as Pete. Peter Edwards is something of a Bethel Park institution, and it's most appropriate that he address us here today. Pete was born on January 2nd, 1921. His parents and younger brother Frank, who lived in Dormont and Brookline, and then moved to Bethel Park in 1926. That year, Pete's father, Pete Seddon Edwards Sr., started the Brookside Lumber and Supply Company that is known so well to us today, 90 years later. Pete Sr. also had a construction company that built many of the homes in Brookside Farms. Pete Jr. attended a one-room schoolhouse on Irishtown Road. In his school days, he was better known as Teddy and then Ted. During high school, Peter Jr. worked at Brookside Lumber. Pete graduated from Bethel Park High School in 1938. There were 47 students in his graduating class. Pete Jr. then attended Mercyburg's Academy and went to Colgate University, where he majored in economics. It was while at Colgate that Pete first went by the name of Pete, as we know him today. On December 7, 1941, while walking back from a class at Colgate, Pete was met by students telling him about the bombing at Pearl Harbor that had just occurred. Emotionally struck, Pete decided that he wanted to join the war effort and was able to graduate one semester early. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps. Pete trained in Nashville, Montgomery, Alabama, Arkansas, Virginia, and Georgia. And in August 1944, Pete was stationed in San Severo and Mondolfo, Italy. From September of 1944 to May of 1945, Pete flew 49 missions as a bomber escort in a P-51 Mustang. In February of 1945, Pete was promoted to first lieutenant. Before Pete entered the military service, he had surgery to correct a 3 times broken nose, a deviated septum. While undergoing the procedure at Presbyterian Hospital in Pittsburgh, he met Ruth Hay from Somerset. They dated and were married on March 17, 1944, in a chapel at Spencer Field in Monterey, Georgia, where he received his commission in wings. Following the war, Pete and his wife Ruth returned to Bethel Park and built a home on Meadowbrook Drive. Pete worked at Brookside Lumber, becoming the president in the early 50s. In 1957, he purchased an automotive distributorship and still acts as a consultant to the man who purchased it from him just last year. Since the 1980s, he has been the chairman of Brookside Lumber. Now at 95 years young, Pete still is active in the lumber company. In addition to his business presence, Pete had been an active member of the Bethel Park civic community, a longtime member of the Kiwanis Club. He served as president 3 times. He is a founding member of the Bethel Park Community Foundation. Pete served on the Bethel Park School District Bond Authority, including as its chairman. Pete was a member of the Bethel Park Planning and Zoning Commission for 5 years, including 2 as chairman. He was president of the Bethel Park Chamber of Commerce and an active member of the Bethel Presbyterian Church. Pete was recently elected as chairman of a chapter of the World War II Pilots Association. Last year, he received the Distinguished Contribution Award from the Bethel Park Athletic Hall of Fame for his many years as a director. Pete has also been blessed with a loving family, many of which are here today. He and his wife Ruth had 4 children. Pete has 12 grandchildren and 14 great-grandchildren who affectionately call him Gramps. Ruth passed away in 1999, and in 2013, Pete married Adeline Huffman of McMurray. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce to you our guest speaker, Peter S. Edwards, Jr.
Morning, everybody. Patriotic citizens and fellow veterans. I feel very honored today to speak in behalf of the people that really we want to honor, or those who died in service to this country. I tried to memorize all this, but my brain doesn't work that good anymore, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read a little bit of it, probably most of it. When the Pearl Harbor happened, all my peers they were upset as I was. They wanted to get in and give tributation to the Japanese and to the Germans for their atrocious acts, remembering Pearl Harbor, the Bataan Death March, and the incessant bombing of London, the killing the citizens, and the atrocities to the Jewish faith. I'm not a hero, believe me. Just one of the millions who fought during that Great War. In World War II, it was not just the veterans who fought for our liberty. It was virtually everybody in the country. Women, heretofore not much seen in the workforce, went to factories, helped build airplanes, ships. They did work, some of it better than the men did. It was a great revelation to a lot, probably even to me. Even the kids went out and collected tinfoil, metal scraps, and so forth to contribute to the war effort. You know, the gasoline, butter, sugar, and many other things were rationed. With cars then, it averaged 10 to 15 miles an hour. 4 gallons a week didn't go. The camaraderie in the service was great. We were from all over the states and all walks of life. We were united, all working toward the same goal of defeating Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo with their massive war machines, and then to return home to our loved ones. I don't believe there was any doubt in our minds about the outcome. It was not if, it was only when. Some of my peers are among those we honor today. Friends, classmates, teammates who didn't come back, along with their families who suffered their loss. Tom Brokaw, the famous radio and television personality, called us the greatest generation. In a book he wrote, and the term caught on. My vote for the greatest generation would have been really the first one. The guys in a ragtag army defeated the great British organized army who wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. To me, that gave us the first democratic republic in the world and the greatest nation in the world, and has become the home for many immigrants, including your ancestors and mine, who came across the pond from the old countries to find the American dream. Although recently, we've been moving away from the way of life that attracted those who came before us. I do hope and pray that the good sense and patriotism will prevail and we can remain living in what we feel is the greatest nation on earth. And should our country be faced with the same situation in years to come, other generations would rise up as we did. It truly was a war that had to be won to preserve our country and many other countries from living under the dictatorships that we fought. We thank all of you for attending today to remember for those who paid for our future with their lives. Many thanks to the municipality and American Legion for arranging this memorial service to remember those and let them know that we have not forgotten them. Thank you.
Those were some very kind words, but he did make one mistake that I noted. He is a hero. At this time, I'd like to read the 5 new wall engravings for 2016. They are Wilbur James Cable, United States Army. Harry J. Chemalinsky, United States Marine Corps. Samuel A. Connell, United States Navy. William M. Polonis, United States Army. And John Cedar, Jr., United States Navy. We also have one new paver, and that reads as follows. Joseph Chemalinsky, 1922 to 1948. Dedicated to country and community. First Sergeant, U.S. Army, wounded combat veteran, World War II, 1940 to 1945. And patrolman, Bethel Park Police, killed in action, March 9th, 1948. Bethel Park honors its own. This time I'd like to introduce Mark O'Brien.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about that young man today. It's been a journey, and what a journey it has been. I feel like I know that young man, Joseph Chemalinsky. I would be honored to sit down and have a cup of joe with Bethel Park's own First Sergeant, Sergeant Joe. From a conversation in a cookie aisle at Walmart with Colonel Knaus to today, it's been a journey. I heard all about the childhood days of Bethel Park, the boyhood friends that roamed the streets of Bethel Park, Chemalinsky, Knaus, Gorsick, Zader, Tischler. We all know these names. The soccer field that was where the car wash, Kudla's Car Wash is, and Joe was the goalie. Joe's father, hurt in the mining accident. The kids named him Shaky Harry. The coal mine strike. And then there's Joe's mom. Well, every morning she baked bread in their outside stoves in her backyard, and the kids would run because they could smell that wonderful smell of baking bread. She was a very kind and generous woman and shared what she had. Bethel Park in the 1920s and 1930s. This is just great stuff. Today's story is a group effort. I'd like to just briefly thank these people for finding out this information, putting this story together. So many people. Tim Murray, Chief O'Connor, Caroline Briggs, Bill Spagnell, Kathy Lordi and the girls in the office, Billy Knaus, the Chemalinsky family, Sharon Taylor, Tim Murphy, Skip Horniak, Devin Robinson, Denise Johns, and James McLean for putting all these words together on paper. I'm overwhelmed and grateful. I'm amazed how this memorial brings light to the lost. Today, the Chemalinskys come out in force. I welcome the Chemalinsky family, and we are honored to talk about your Uncle Joe. Joseph Chemalinsky. The central mission of the Bethel Park Veterans Memorial Committee is to properly honor and recognize those who have served our nation and our community through military service. The memorial that surrounds us this morning has been built name by name and brick by brick to keep before us the names of those who served and sacrificed for our freedom and liberty. Today, we specially honor a Bethel Park citizen who deserves our acknowledgement and our remembrance for the exceptional service and heroism he displayed in 25 years on this earth. We always knew about Joseph Chemalinsky's service as a police officer. He died in the line of duty, and his name is etched on the memorial outside the police department. We knew less about his prior military service, but thanks to the dedicated perseverance of a group of caring people from Bethel Park, the assistance of the office of Congressman Tim Murphy, Devin Robinson, and Denise Johns from National Archives, we were able just recently to attain the military service records for Joseph. Due to these efforts, we know a lot more about Joseph Chemerinsky. Many of his records were lost in a flood and don't exist anymore. It was an amazing effort. Joseph was born in 1922. He enlisted in the United States Army on October 14, 1940. He was regular Army and signed a 3-year enlistment during the height of the Second World War. He served in Company B of the 351st Regiment attached to the 88th Infantry Division. He obtained a rank of First Sergeant. Joseph's military records confirmed that his tour of duty included service in North Africa and in Rome Arno, north of Pennines, and the Po Valley campaigns in Italy, with 3 beach landings. Captured Germans proclaimed that the 88 fought like devils. The division eventually adopted the nickname the Blue Devils in reference to their blue soldier patches on their shoulders. From Naples through the Gustav Line, through the Gothic Line, and on to the Alps, they fought like blue devils in the mountains of Italy. The 351st played a major role in the fall of Rome. This is a campaign and part of the war that we don't really know or hear a whole lot about. We hear about France and we hear about the Pacific. If you got time sometime, Google the 88th Infantry in Italy. You'll be amazed what these men endured. Joseph was wounded on October 10th, 1944. His records, his general order records that would explain his badges and his Purple Heart and his Bronze Star have been lost. All we can do is look at where Joe was and what was happening. During this time, the Germans launched a counterattack against the 351st. It's described by history as savagery. The 351st counterattacked. Heavy fighting continued on the line towards the Po Valley. Company G came closest to breaking through, but was literally wiped out. From family members, I have heard that Joe did not wish to talk about his military service. And knowing all these World War II veterans over the years, I think I know why. Joe lost many friends that day and many other days. Many buddies. And that was the most important things to these individuals who fought this war. And Joe was the first sergeant, so apparently he was responsible for a lot of those buddies and young men that were lost on that day. Joe was sent to the rear for recovery from his wounds, then returned to the front lines for the remainder of the war. Germany surrendered Italy on May 2nd, 1945. Denise Johns, National Archives representative, who does all this for a living every day, quotes, "All these men are heroes for what they endured. To receive a Bronze Star and a combat infantry badge is truly remarkable. Joe was in the worst of it for a very long time, and he is truly an American hero." Joseph was honorably discharged on August 13, 1945. His military records list his following decorations and citations: Bronze Star Medal, Combat Infantry Badge, Purple Heart Medal, Good Conduct Medal, American Defense Service Medal, European, African, Middle Eastern Service Medal with 3 Bronze Stars. At the time of discharge, Joseph Chemerinsky had 3 years, 1 month, and 14 days of continental service and had served 1 year, 8 months, and 15 days overseas. A total of nearly 5 years of military service to his country. The story of Joseph Chemerinsky does not end. Though with the conclusion of his decorated military service, Joseph returned home to Bethel Park following military service at the age of 23 and became a police officer in Bethel Park Police Office Department that had just been formed a few years earlier. On March 5th, 1948, Joseph and his fellow officer George Kirchner responded to a burglary in progress at the home of some Bethel resident who were away on vacation. The drama of the events that unfolded that night were captured in the article the next day in the Pittsburgh Press. Officer Kirchner and Chemerinsky responded to the radio alarm sent in by Robert Stoner shortly before 8 a.m. Mr. Stoner was on his way to visit a girlfriend when he noticed an upstairs light on the home of his aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Kingsing, of Broughton Road, and Hillcrest. He knew the Kingsings had been in Florida for more than a week and stopped to investigate. As he approached the front door, he saw the window had been broken. Inside, he saw a man with a revolver on the stairway landing. Stoner went to the house of the girlfriend and called the Bethel Township Police. The radio call went to Kirchner, a former county detective, and Chemerinsky. The officers bracketed the house, and Kircher went in the front door. He surprised one of the robbers, rifling in the dining room buffet. The thug's pistol was on a nearby chair. Chemerinsky, meanwhile, slipped through the back door and surprised the other robber in the kitchen. He disarmed him and took his pistol and billfold. The officers handcuffed the prisoners together, searched them again, and started out the door. As they reached the yard, the prisoner DePofi and Wilson spun around, and one of them produced a handgun. "Put them up and keep your hands off your guns," was the command. The officers halted momentarily, then grabbed for their guns and a brake for their squad car. Chemerinsky was shot in the back as he ducked around the front of the car. A second bullet hit Kircher as he spun around near the back of the car to return fire. Both men fired back. After they were wounded, Kircher said, "And I was one of his shots that hit DePofi." The gunman dropped momentarily, and Wilson half dragged him into the thick bush. The Kingsing house, both officers were too badly wounded to pursue. Kircher dragged himself to the squad car and sent in a radio alarm. We know subsequently, press reports that Joseph Chemerinsky was rushed by ambulance to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries and died 4 days later. The shooter DePofi and Wilson were apprehended later that night of an incident in New Eagle. The criminal's trial was DePofi was identified as the gunman. He shot Chemerinsky, and DePofi was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death in the electric chair. It was also learned that the pistol on the chair that Officer Kircher collected did not in fact belong to DePofi, but was the gun belonging to the homeowner. Kircher and Chemerinsky believed that they had secured DePofi's weapon when they took that pistol, but DePofi in fact had a small Derringer tucked in his pants, and that was the weapon used to shoot Kircher and Chemerinsky. Joseph Chemerinsky was 25 years old when he died in the line of duty. He lived with his widowed mother just down the street on Brightwood Road. Despite his young age, Joseph had served his country as a military veteran, been wounded in action, received a Purple Heart Medal and a service medal with 3 Bronze Stars, became a member of the Bethel Park Police Force, and gave his life in service to the country. We take a moment, 68 years after his passing, to remember Joseph Chemerinsky, to recall his service, to recount his bravery, and to acknowledge our debt to him. We will provide for his remembrance through a memorial paver in his name here at the memorial, and lasting gratitude for all his actions and hearts. We honor today Joseph Chemerinsky, First Sergeant, U.S. Army decorated war veteran, Bethel Park policeman, patrolman, and fellow citizen of Bethel Park. Thank you so much. I forgot I was supposed to introduce somebody. I got emotionally charged here. Today we have a special presentation from Bethel Park Fife and Drum, Gail Mattis.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gail Mattis, and I'm with the Regent of Bethel Fife and Drum, Daughters of the American Revolution. Please let me repeat the oath that every soldier takes when he enlists. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and orders of officers appointed over me, according to regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. This oath is much like a blank check written to his country. When he says this oath, he doesn't know what he will have to do to fulfill that oath. He may be ordered to serve in jungles or deserts, stateside or halfway around the world. However, he does what he must to fulfill that oath to protect our liberties and freedom. In some cases, with Russell Kurtz, the price is high. Army Sergeant Russell Kurtz died on February 11th, 2007, serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was 22 years old when an IED detonated near his vehicle during combat operations in Fallujah, Iraq. He was proudly serving his country under the oath he swore to uphold. Some say that it is the wind that keeps our flag flying, but I believe it is the spirit of men like Russell and those who gave their life that keeps our flag aloft. Please, Mr. and Mrs. Kurtz, come forward. Bethel, Fife, and Drum would like to present you with this flag flown over the Capitol building. There's a certificate that goes with it, and it reads what our chapter and this community want you to know. We do not forget. For as it is written in stone in this community, sacrifice is meaningless without remembrance.
As has been said today, today is the day the spotlight shines on those who have fallen on the battlefield for our country. So, on behalf of our family, of those 41 soldiers going back to the Revolutionary War who have died for our country, and if I might also on behalf of the family of Army Special Forces Staff Sergeant Patrick Kutzbaugh, who, although is not a Bethel Park resident, who was killed in Afghanistan the same year that our son was killed, is buried catty corner to Russell at the Bethel Cemetery. I'd just like to thank you for remembering. It means a lot to the Gold Star families.
At this time, I would like to reintroduce Lieutenant Peter Edwards, Jr. for the reading of the names of Bethel Park's fallen heroes from the American Revolution through today.
Thank you, Mayor. This was the war that I participated in. So I know a lot of the people on this list. Friends of mine, classmates, teammates. We look at the American Revolution. Most of you have probably heard the name Fife and Gilfillan. The names are still around here. Still, the families are still around here. And in Israel P. Holtz, everybody around here has to know at least one Holtz. There were a lot of them, great folks. And in World War II, folks I knew were Willie Burtick, that I played ball with, great guy and a great athlete. I knew Chuck Coates and Andy Cost. Ralph Galliford married a gal that I dated. After him. Bob Landau family, I knew a lot of those, and they were good friends of mine. Frank Masenic. William Zyenga was a football coach here in the 40s. He was called into the Navy. Lawrence Snovac was a fullback on the Bethel High football team that played for Class B championship back in 1936. Because he would go into the line so hard with his back horizontal to the horizon. His nickname was Piggy. And then there was George Stovash. There were a lot of Stovash boys, and they all were great baseball players and enjoyed playing the game. Some of you might know Bob Stovash, who is a nephew. There was Philip Tosi, Walter Tukolsky, another good friend of mine. And during the Vietnam War, Leo John Kelly III, his father was a very good friend of mine. And all his peers and I, remarkable how he was so proud of his son and what happened to him. Let me read the names. From the American Revolutionary War, James Fife, Wilson McCulley, Johnson Gilfillan. From the Civil War, Samuel Morgan Adams, David Crum, Israel P. Haltz, David Forbes Morrow, James J.S. Phillips, Thomas C. Wilson. World War I, we only lost one guy in World War I. James R. Naylor. World War II, William Burtick, Charles Coates, Andy Cost, Frank J. Daly, Frank Francisco, Ralph Galliford, Richard G. Gates, Raymond Cagle, Gerald Knaus, Robert E. Landau, Frank Masenic, Earl Meadville, James Parker, Andrew Partika, Louis Puchnick, Ronald L. Robinson, William Sayenga, Philip Tosi, Walter Tukolsky, Andrew Urbis and Jacob Urbis, August Vihar, and George Wasco. From the Vietnam War, Leo John Kelly III, Jeffrey M. Walsh, Charles M. Swain, and from Iraq, Russell Kurtz. They made the supreme sacrifice so we all could be here today, and we're speaking English, not Japanese or German. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have one last musical performance from the Bethel Park High School Top 21. But before we do that, I wanted to give a couple extra thanks. We have them listed on the back of the program. But I want to also thank Kathy Lordi, because she's done a ton of work here. Lowe's for supplying us with the flowers. And our landscaping is done by a company, 20 Landscape. So at this time, I'd like to introduce again the Bethel Park High School Top 21.
Undimmed by human
Thank you very much. At this time, we will have the placing of the wreath with Lieutenant Peter Edwards Jr., Colonel William Knaus, and Gail Mattis. That'll be followed by taps by the Bethel Park High School Band, and during taps, the flags will be lowered to half-mast to honor the servicemen and women by the Veterans Memorial Committee. That concludes our service. Thank you all for attending, and enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day.
Garrett, right at the end. Hold the end. The end. There you go. Good. Things are pretty good, Tim.